bring this meeting to the order of the Winthrop Board of Appeals. We're going to go right to number 11 of 2019, 10 to 26 Somerset Avenue, and the applicant 10 to 26 Somerset Avenue LLC. This is a continuation from our May Board of Appeals hearing, and with that, I turn it over to Attorney Cipolletta. And Attorney Cipolletta, the AC is really loud, so for the benefit of the public, I'm going to have to ask for you to speak up, which I know you can do.
Indeed, thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, James Cipolletta, 385 Broadway Revere, on behalf of the applicant. And Joanna Schwartz is here as representative of Winthrop. As a couple of preliminary matters, Mr. Chairman and the members, after listening to some of the comments from neighbors, have ongoing discourse with people who have been communicating with us, and also picking up some of the concerns that were mentioned at the board in its first public hearing. And Fellow has reconfigured the building, so they've moved the rear yard boundary or footprint of the building back. So it's back 15 plus feet. The rear yard setback, according to the ordinance, is 15 feet. We had originally thought and were told that we would need, in any event, a rear yard setback because, notwithstanding any height or other issues, the CBD district does require a 15-foot setback. So the plan has been modified, Mr. Chairman, and to that extent, I'm filing a motion for leave to amend our plan and our application/appeal, and also have copies of the new site plan showing the setback being compliant with the dimensional control regulations. So if I may, Mr. Chairman, I didn't email these, and I think I copied all the board members on it, but I'm going to, with the chairman's permission, give these to the clerk, have them marked as exhibits sequentially, and have them entered into the record.
Thank you.
In addition to those submissions, we also have two engineering reports. One from Briggs Engineering that shows the groundwater and soil surface, etc., and the other from Haley and Aldrich. And I refer to those in my legal memorandum that I filed with the board, and it will be discussed if we get to that portion of the presentation or the case where we have to address issues relative to a potential variance. I'm not going to read the legal memorandum, but I just want to point out a few things that were raised as issues during the last portion of the first portion of the public hearing. And a lot of this confusion or the issue that brings us here has to do with the maps. And what map is the controlling map? Whose determination is correct? Is it Mr. McGee? Is it Foreman Place? Is it Novello? Or is it just pretty obvious? And so a couple of the cases that, and I've attached copies of the cases to the back of the legal memorandum as well, is that number one, whether or not the 2014 map was ever adopted, and that shows certain properties within the CBD district, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter for two reasons. One is that, according to Newburyport versus Thurlow, which is in the brief, and I supplied a copy, a zoning map doesn't need to be adopted. The zoning ordinance that is drafted by the council, and in that case the city council, and in our case the town council, can speak to a map and refer to any map that is available and shows zoning districts or shows lots on the map. I'm not sure, but I don't think that the 2006 map is challenged, and I don't think the 87, 83, or 74 maps are challenged either. So for purposes of our discussion this evening, and for Joanna's presentation, we are going to assume that because the 2014 map that was proposed does not change with respect to our property any of the boundary lines. It changed the boundary lines and changed some of the properties that would be included in the CBD, but not the one that we're concerned with. The one that abuts us is 20 Cottage Park Road. That's been carried consistently from 74 to 83 to 87 to 2006. The ordinance also indicates that the zoning map is made part of the zoning ordinance, and it says that it is shown below. The map that is shown below is that 2006 map that's in color. And the colors are primarily blue, aqua, turquoise, and the rest. And that is shown both at the clerk's office in the building department, and it's also in the online version of the zoning ordinance. Additionally, it appears in the print volume that's printed by Municode, which is the official code publisher for the town of Winthrop. So that 2006 map is the map that we are assuming is the map because it appears in the zoning ordinances. We're not going to debate whether or not the 2014 map that was part of the proposed master plan was ever adopted or wasn't adopted. It doesn't matter. All of the maps are the same with respect to our property vis-a-vis the abutting property. The courts have said that zoning ordinances in the maps included in them are presumed, they carry the presumption of regularity, and that they are presumed to be correct. And what is on file and in the custody of the town clerk's office is the map. And I've cited the case in the brief. And this is the only map that's on file for public inspection at the town clerk's office. It's also the only one that's on file and under glass at the building department in the office of the building inspector, who is the zoning enforcement officer. And he's been using that since 2006 to make zoning determinations town-wide. I think at this point, if I may suggest, Mr. Chairman, it may make sense to address, to bifurcate these issues and not try to address the issue of the map and whether or not we need a variance. I think would it make sense to have the map presentation first, and then if the board makes a decision one way, then we don't need to address variances. If the board makes a decision the other way, then we do need to address one variance, and that would be the height variance. And I only say that because Joanna has a fairly comprehensive presentation with respect to the map. So I'd rather, and I think it flows more conveniently and rationally to go into her presentation now rather than my going on to the second issue.
So my only concern is we're only going to, well, given the number of people here,
Right.
having two sets of public comments if we do it, I think that I'd want, I guess if the assumption is we don't agree on the map piece of it, which I don't know where the board is on that, but if we don't agree on the map piece of it, then we can open it for public comments after the presentation on the map and hear everything about the variance and sit through that, knowing that you still have to do a presentation on variance. And you
Right.
may well hear from the public again after that. I just want to
Correct.
caution you that could be redundant. I do think that, in assuming the board's okay with it, hearing about the map, and I also think as part of that, we want to understand what's changed from a building perspective relative to that setback. I assume there's renderings associated with that.
Yes.
That should be part of the map piece, just understanding that and outlining why, if the board made a determination that your position on the map is the correct one, why there's no relief needed. So that, I think we need that piece of it too if we're going to bifurcate this that way. So is that acceptable to the board as a way to proceed with members sitting on this? Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to hear the rest of the map presentation, also hear about the building setbacks, and understand why, if the map is correct, the way they say it is, that we don't need to go into the further discussion on variances if they in fact do comply with setbacks, and we have to walk through the setbacks.
Right.
No. So we're going to proceed that way. Once they close that part of the presentation, we're going to open it for public comment. The public comment will be open to the map, the variances, all pieces of this, so that we can make sure we have a complete record on all of the comments from the public before the board makes any decision on any piece of this. Okay? So that's so with that, Mr. Cipolletta, please.
So before you go the way it fires up that computer, the two things I would just like to mention.
You're going to have to speak up again.
That there have been 3 determinations as to the boundary. One was made by Mr. McGee. We have no idea what data he used about methodology. The second was done by Form Place. They made a presentation to the planning board about 16 days after Mr. McGee made his determination, without having the benefit of Form Place. And we have kind of Form Place analysis as part of the presentation, but it is also entered into the record as an exhibit from the last hearing. It appears, though, that the building inspector, as hard as he tried to do it, made an assumption that zoning boundaries, zoning district boundaries follow lot lines. They don't. And the case that says that would be Beechwood Acres versus Hamilton. It's a 1966 case. It's in the brief, and I attach it as well. It says, boundary lines in Great Park ran through open areas of wooded land. Supreme Judicial Court commented, the definition of a zone boundary by meets and bounds would have been more satisfactory than merely showing it on the zoning map included with the exhibits. Nonetheless, the court held that the division lines between districts, quote, on a zoning map was shown with sufficient definiteness to enable Beechwood to determine its location to its land, and rule that the zoning bylaw and map were valid in full effect as to the locus. And I think that is right on point with Form Place's methodology and their conclusion as to where the boundary of the CBD is and what properties, specifically residential properties, are in the CBD. Now I'll just let Joanna give her presentation with the chairman's. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you to the board for being here tonight to hear our presentation again. As you know, it's been a long road to get to this meeting tonight, and I know everyone in this room is looking really forward to a resolution. I'm very hopeful that what we are presenting tonight will get us to that point. As you know, my partners and I entered Winthrop in 2017 with the best of intentions. Our goal was to help put the master plan into action. We believed in that plan, and we still do. And as the months and days and now years are going by without the implementation of the plan, it's becoming even more urgent. Our building has become a symbol of Winthrop's future, which is not looking so great today. Its continued blight and decay is harmful to the entire community. I honestly stand here so completely still surprised that I'm in this position. We, as you know, very firmly believe, we were told from the beginning by multiple sources and every piece of data, that we have 4-story zoning. Once I present my presentation tonight, you will see why I have never been more convinced than I am at this moment that we are 100% correct in that assessment. It doesn't go without notice, and I think it is important to remind the board and the audience that as developers, throughout this process, we have conducted ourselves with the highest level and standard of behavior. We have listened to the residents and incorporated their feedback to a level that is really unprecedented in the development community. Our goal was and continues to be to develop a building that will catalyze the future of Winthrop and the CBD. We've incorporated every single request that was made by the folks in this room, and we made significant financial concessions along the way. It doesn't go without saying, though, that I actually think the project is better for the suggestions, and I'm very proud of what we're presenting today. The arguments against the 4-story zoning have been numerous, and honestly, some of them even sounded valid upon first review. But once I walk you through this systematic review that we've done of all of these maps, you will realize that they are not. The question of the map that Jim was referring to before is really a red herring, as he mentioned. For this analysis, it doesn't matter whether 2014 was done properly or not. It doesn't even matter if 2006 was done properly or not, which we firmly believe that it was, and everyone in the room seems to have strong consensus that that is the map. But the conclusions that we draw tonight are valid since 1974. It's really interesting once you have clarity on a subject. We spent a year and a half swirling around this topic, and now it's really so clear. It doesn't matter that the Delahanty memo had 500 pages, or that Allegheny thought that our property was abutting a residential district. When you look at the actual analysis, you will see that that is just simply not geometrically accurate according to the satellite data and the maps that we have on file here. The Delahanty memo and Allegheny's letter were based on assumption. I get it. It kind of makes like rational sense when you look at that area of the CBD. My building is the only commercial building, and it is true that our next door neighbor is a 2-family house. And then right across the street, there's a commercial building, and right next to that, there is a residence. Like, I get it. It kind of makes sense that those houses would be zoned residential, but they're not. And that is the crucial question here. It doesn't matter if we wish they were, we wish they weren't, or these neighbors are upset that they are or they aren't. The house next door to us is absolutely unequivocally zoned in the Center Business District and has been for as long as we can figure out. I'm going to go through that, but Darren, in support of your question about the zoning and about the setbacks, I'm going to first talk about the setbacks and what we did.
Just before you start,
Yes.
there's conversations going on in the room, and while the microphone might not pick them up, I get distracted by shiny objects. So, like, if you could keep the chatter in the audience to a minimum, that would be super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So, I'm sorry that this is behind you guys, but what I really wanted to do, I wanted to show you all as a board how serious we are about moving forward and taking this to the next step of approval. And we have obviously made so many concessions up until this point. However, I realized that even if you agreed on the map, that we were still requesting a variance. And I am trying as best I can to remove every hurdle that we possibly can from this project. So I so firmly believe in the map, I do not think we are going to be requesting a height variance. I believe that we are correct. However, we were still encroaching on the rear setback of the building. We were doing that because, and this was the original plan, we were doing that because that rear setback was providing us an additional 9 parking spots, which we know in talking with the neighbors how important parking was. However, that encroachment was only on the first floor at the parking deck. And so when we realized that that variance would be a hindrance to our approval and possibly delay us, we decided that we were going to take it away. And so what our architect, Will Shelton, our architect, is here tonight. And we do have a version of this that's been submitted that's on his official documentation, to scale paper, et cetera. But this I put on the presentation just to make it easier to see here. Is all we've done is we've pushed that parking deck back. It's actually way further, more than 15 feet, because Once we were losing those parking spaces, it made sense to align that wall with the wall of the upper levels of the building. And so you can see there, we are now at a 21-foot at minimum rear setback in that area. And so that's really the result of what we've changed. And you can see here, this is the zoning table that was always in our presentation on the front page. What I've manually changed from that is on building height, I've changed it from requires relief to complies in the hopes that we all agree with my analysis. And then I have also changed the rear, which used to say like 5 feet there. I switched it to 21.4, and now that also complies. So every other element of the zoning code is in compliance, and the question that we have tonight remains the maps and the height. Is that okay? No problem.
We may have questions as we get to
Absolutely,
questions from the
absolutely.
board, so.
Okay, let me see. This is such a computer. I don't have to click the notes. Okay. Perfect. Oh, thank you so much. Okay. So now we get to the zoning map analysis. And Darren, the impetus of this presentation actually came from a request from your office, from you, related to the board, saying we really want to understand where you and Bello believe are the meets and bounds of the district, and how do we filter through all of this zoning information. So what I did was I took a systematic review of going back as far as I could in the maps and evaluated them specifically as it relates only to our corner, Somerset, 20 Cottage Park, and our specific area. And as I've alluded to already, the analysis clearly shows that our property and Cottage Park have been in the district since 1974, has not changed since before 1974. We don't need the 2014 maps for this zoning to be correct. We don't have a residential district. I'm going to now show you how. This is background. This was the methodology I used. I went through what is now known as the Delahanty memo, found every map that was in the Delahanty memo. There was also a map from 1974 that I found on an archive website, but it was also in a memo that was in some communication between the planning board and the neighbors. So it was a map that's kind of been in play, so to speak, for a while. Scanned all of those maps with the highest resolution that we could, walked the aspect ratio of all of them, and then kind of validated the scale of all of them. We zoomed them in where we could, we validated the scale, and then we overlaid lot lines, and we cross-referenced them with each other. And I'm going to show you how I did that. It's pretty cool, actually. I had a lot of fun with this. So this is the 1974 map. This is not in any official zoning book as we found, but as I mentioned, it was in official correspondence with this board. You can see the area of interest is our little corner over there. It's in red, really hard to see, really blurry, but you can see that it's shaded. Here's that same map zoomed in, and you can still see that same area is shaded. Let's go to 1983. This will make sense once we kind of work through all these pages, folks. So here's the 1983 map. This we took from the general code that was printed in 2006. Again, area of interest circled, pretty blurry, but pretty clear that it is considered in a business district. Again, that's a little bit zoomed in over there. And then we jump to 1987. 1987 was nice because it was much more clear. This I took from the Delahanty memo, and it was referred to I guess the town council vote when they updated the zoning in 1987. This was the map that they referred to. And then here we come to 2006, which we know, no lot lines, but now we finally have some color, and we can see that this area of interest is still looking very similar and unchanged, and if you make it bigger, it's also very clear and big and unchanged. Okay, so now this is where it gets interesting, okay? I took all of those maps and put them next to each other, and I validated them for scale, like how accurate are these maps. I downloaded the lot lines from the official site of GIS lot lines. These are taken from satellite imagery, and these are considered the official lot lines of the state of Massachusetts. And that the source is listed right there. As you can see, even with the haziness and blurriness of each of these maps, you can see that these lot lines very validly go over the areas of the map. So the map is scaled properly. It's not perfect, it's a little fuzzy, but you can see, even going back to 1974, that the maps are representative of what the lot lines in the town are, okay? And I thought this was a really important step to just show that I'm not cherry picking data from our specific area of the town. This is a pretty, broad view of the CBD, and it's showing all of the shaded areas according to these maps, and it's laying them out with the lot lines as they're shown. And so it clearly shows that even though these are hand-drawn, whoever was drawing them knew what they were doing, and they are, in fact, very close to scale of what the official lot lines are today. Pretty impressive, actually, I have to say. Okay, so then what I did was I said, well, now we know the lot lines, let's talk about our specific property and the property we care about. This is 20 Cottage Park. I also want to be very clear as a caveat. This analysis makes no assessment about any single other residential lot in the CBD. It only talks about 20 Cottage Park. For those of you who are listening who may be concerned, I am only worried about this specific lot that impacts my particular property. So what I did here was we overlaid the lot lines of 10-26 Somerset and 20 Cottage Park, obviously in different colors so we can see what we're looking at. And we, to scale, made a shape image of those properties. And you can see I pulled them out and put them off on the side right there. That shape was then locked, and the aspect ratio of that image was locked, which means that if any size or shape or rotation is changed on that shape, it maintains the same exact ratio of scale. So we cannot change the scale once we do that, okay? So then we said, well, that's great. How does this compare to the shading on all of the different maps that we saw throughout the decades? And so what you can see here is that even though the lines are blurry and they're dotted or they're hash crossed or they're purple and they're not so specific, once you overlay that design to scale every single time, you can very clearly see that my property and the next door property sit firmly in the center business district. And this has been the same case since 1974, and probably prior. I could not find a map prior to that. There has been no change. I know the neighbors listening to me behind me are going to be very distressed about this. They believe very firmly, but erroneously, that the change to that property happened in 2014 and happened improperly. That isn't what happened. That's not what happened. This property has been in the zone since before 1974, and it's clearly shown here. I have another image here. This gets a little funky, but what we did was we created transparencies out of each of those digital transparencies, not printed transparencies, digital transparencies of each of those maps. We overlaid them on each other, again, to prove that the scale is the same across those maps. And then we also overlaid the image of our property and the next door property, again, proving the same exact points. Showing it a little bit more clearly, just with 2006, you can see the same answer, 10-26, 20, fully in the purple, okay? This is validated along with the form in place, and that, sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is that good? Do you want more?
Yeah.
Okay. Foreman Place did a very similar analysis, as you know, and as is mentioned in Jim's full legal memo. Foreman Place was hired by the town of Winthrop to evaluate the map situation. They are conducting a parallel process to ours, which is still confusing to me, but that is the case of what is happening. And as part of that analysis, hired by the town of Winthrop, this was their similar results of the same analysis that we have just shown you above. And this is also an exhibit. We submitted this with our last presentation last month. And then just for point of reference for you to see it from a satellite imagery and to really understand, the subject property is in red here. This graphic I took from the Foreman Place presentation. The yellow line is showing where the 2014 map would be, not where the 2006 is, but where the 2014 proposed map would have been. All it does in our case is extend the boundary and further create a buffer of our property into the CBD by adding in 30 Cottage Park. But again, does not have any difference to 20 Cottage Park or our property. So the conclusions, which is what I started with, are that at risk of being ridiculously repetitive, we are zoned for 4 stories. We do not abut a residential district. We do abut a 2-story home. That 2-story home has been in the district since before 1974. We should have 4-story zoning by right. There are a few appendices attached to this presentation that were submitted for your review. I do not feel that it's necessary to go through them here. It's definitely repetitive content over things that we have already discussed ad nauseum here. I'm happy to answer any questions about that. But I think the combination of this presentation showing the clarity of the situation beyond a reasonable doubt, we have gotten ourselves so mired in so many nuances and complexities of which map and which zoning, and was the process okay, was it not okay? I hope it's very clear to you that all of that should just fall away right now, and we look at the specific mathematical, very supportable, satellite-driven analysis here that proves that our conclusion is correct. And I hope also that our willingness to continue to make changes to create a pathway for approval, such as the setback change that we made, will also facilitate your decision tonight. So thank you.
Anything further, Attorney Cipolletta?
No.
So with that, that concludes the presentation of the applicant. We're going to open it up for questions from the public. Again, when you're recognized, please stand, state your name and address for the record, and
I kept the receipt.
good. If you could, so last time around we had a lot of comment about when variances can be granted, when they can't be granted, what variance law is, all that good stuff. That's all in the record. We heard it, we understand it. We don't need to rehash all of that. That said, you're the members of the public. You're free to say whatever you want. Just please realize that there's other cases after this one, and to the extent that we can prevent being super repetitive, that would be appreciated. But again, it's an open forum. So with that, I will open this to public comment. Anyone like to be heard on this matter? Yes, ma'am, and then here.
Yes, Rosina Florentine, 25 Road, and
Would you mind coming forward? We can't hear you very well up here because of the AC. Sorry about that.
Rosina Florentine, 20 Cottage Park Road, Precinct 5, and I'm the abutter to the proposed building. If Joanna could go over again, please, or Mr. Cipolletta, the setback, because all I got was the 15 feet. I don't know what that means for my property. And also, respectfully, Joanna, I heard what you said about, oh, I can't talk now, about about my home being in the center business district. Respectfully, I'd like to say I don't agree with that. I feel like my house, my home is my home and it's not packed. But I understand what you're saying, but I respectfully have to disagree with that. But if you could go ahead and explain again the 15 feet.
Sure. Darren, am I allowed to answer that now, or do you want to, how do you want to do that?
Why don't we do it, on this instance, let's do it through the board, but we try to not have back and forth, but this one, if there's specific clarification about the setback. think
Yeah,
that would
I need clarification for that because I want to know
Yep.
if it's touching my property in any way.
Sorry, it's warming up here. It should.
Would you like to look at this? Because that might be more helpful to you. It's my copy.
Thank you.
I have another copy here.
Thank you.
Okay. Can you move the screen?
I'm sorry.
This.
Go to view.
Okay. So,
This is going on the part down the face
yeah.
here. So we have not changed the setback adjacent to your property. The building remains where it was. This portion here, the building used to come basically to the backside of this row of plantings, and then it stepped back on floors 2 and 4. We've now brought the full building, floors 1 through 4, to this 21-foot 4 at a minimum setback from this property line, which I believe is the Bank of America parking lot.
Yes, it is. Well, there's a like a playground kind of open, not playground, there's a backyard and next to what used to be for kids only, and then it's, okay.
Right, this is the area that has been revised. Right here.
No, so her house is on the other, so on the part that is, can we go to the one, sorry, can we go to the one that's a little bit over here, this one? Let me just go over to this one. It doesn't have all of the architectural stuff in there, but it has, it's just a little, I think it's a little easier to see, it's a little bigger. Okay, so by definition, because of the shape of our lot, the only rear line we have is this rear line. Every other, we have a front yard, which is Somerset, and we have 3 side yards. And that is by definition of your own code, which I actually put here and I submitted for you guys as part of the presentation. So there is no side yard requirement in the CBD if you don't abut residential, which our contention is that we do not. The front line is the property line that divides the street from the right of way, and you can choose, and if it's a corner lot, you can choose it. We've chosen Somerset. The rear lot line is I highlighted it there, it goes on, but it says it's only the one lot line furthest from the street shall be considered the rear lot line, and every other lot line is considered a side lot line. So according to this definition, the way we have defined it here, the rear is exactly what we changed, and we've been very consistent since day one, calling that rear and everything else side and front. And because of that analysis of of those definitions, and so we therefore pulled that back so that we comply with that. And Rosina, I understand that you disagree with the analysis, and I'm sorry that that is not the answer that you wanted, but the data tells us the answer. As you know, we have made many changes to that side yard to facilitate and make it better for you, knowing that you are right there. We have put in a very large, a tall and lovely fence, as well as there's going to be some vegetation there. We also got rid of balconies that would be looking over your house, and we made windows smaller, and we've done kind of everything we can to minimize the impact of what that would be next door. But according to the zoning requirements. This is her side lot. Let me see, her rear. Where would we see that? My presentation, that last page. Okay, hang on. I think that one was the, okay. Yeah, let's see. Okay, so
Without having to trim that up with the parking lot.
yeah. Yeah, we don't abut the rear of the lot, we abut the side of
I
the lot.
understand
Yeah,
that, but your side yard setback, lot line,
yeah.
fully envelops her whole lot, right? Because her lot does not extend into where your rear yard setback is.
I do not believe so, but we would have to look. But regardless, we've now expanded, we've now made that much bigger.
Does that help you understand?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I see. So for clarification, the question was, not the words were not, whether they were using any portion of your property to get their required
Oh,
setback.
gosh, no.
And they're not. I think
Oh,
they're
no.
running it off property.
Oh, absolutely not. We're using it on our own property line.
I just wanted her to be
Yeah,
clear.
no,
Yes,
okay.
okay.
Because I was-
That was the
Okay,
question.
I understand why you wanted that clarification.
Yes.
Thank you.
I wanted some clarity that rear yard setback doesn't really abut your property, it's further behind your line.
Correct.
So their adjacency to you is still that side yard setback, which is 3.5 feet approximately.
That's her line.
Oh, there you go. You can see it now.
So her lot.
So, attorney, I forgot the last name, I apologize.
Doherty.
Okay, Attorney Doherty.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, lovely to see you all again. My name is Jacqueline Doherty, and I represent residents who live at 20 Cottage Park Road, 30 Cottage Park Road, and 23 Cottage Park Road. As Mr. Chairman said, we've gone through a number of things, so I won't go through everything. I know you have it on the record, you have my letter from last time. One thing I will, I'm going to keep my comments to two main points, but first, just to reiterate very quickly, we are very firm in our belief that this property directly abuts a residential zone and a residential parcel that has never been rezoned. Applicants have an affirmative duty. I understand that there's been, a lot of discussion of maps, but there's an affirmative duty when appealing from a decision, a determination by the building inspector to demonstrate that this property was rezoned from residential, and that hasn't happened. And as I explained in detail last time, these variances, I'll briefly touch on the variances so that I don't have to do this twice, but they are impermissible by law. So tonight, the focus of my remarks is going to be two key points. One, this affirmative duty to prove that the building inspector made a mistake in his determination. As the applicant, they have that affirmative duty. And then second, the affirmative duty on the variance would be to prove that the soil condition is unique to their parcel and that unique soil condition creates a hardship. It needs to be specifically connected to what they're requesting, and that has also failed to happen. Attorney Cipoletta's comments regarding the fact that he says that the maps don't matter is a little bit baffling to me. There are very, very specific laws that you all know, Section 5, that is the specific legal mechanism for how you rezone a parcel from residential to business. That they are proper notice, public hearing, and then a vote by the town, a majority vote by the town council. That never happened. I haven't seen any evidence that that ever happened. When this property was built, when my clients bought it, it was residential. whether you want to lay maps on top of each other, if you want to take a map that doesn't have specific parcels on it, and you want to, use PowerPoint, or you want to use Adobe Illustrator, and you want to try and say that if you lay them on top of each other, it looks like it's been this way since 1974, that's fine. That isn't evidence that this parcel has been rezoned through the proper legal mechanisms. I don't have a PowerPoint with me, but I will just, if you'll bear with me for a second, if I take a map, and let's say I take a map and it doesn't have specific parcels on it, but I control for the angle, right? So we have an obtuse angle. And if I take it and I say let's say I take this and I lock it for size, just about the same obtuse angle, then here, oh look, it looks like it fits within this line here, the business district. If I take the exact same angle, locked for size, same parcel, and I just, same dimensions, I understand they aren't messing with the dimensions, but I lengthen it, then it doesn't meet the line. So I'm looking at PowerPoints, I'm looking at maps, I understand a lot of detail and work went into this, but the exact same shape, changed for size, and again, I apologize, I just made this 2 seconds ago. You can maneuver those, We're looking at two isolated parcels. I didn't see a map saying the entire business district lays directly over that. Applicant has admitted that these maps are hand-drawn. The Center Business District was not created until 1987. So in 1974, a map that, again, my client will speak to very specifically because he was on the planning board when that map was drawn, but a map in 1974 with no parcel lines, with no specific lot lines, before the Center Business District was created, is not what's going to be controlling. There isn't any evidence that this parcel was ever rezoned to a village business district, to the Center Business District. There is no vote that has been called. And very specifically, when the Center Business District was created, each of the business parcels that was rezoned on Somerset, very specifically, notice was given, public hearing, each individual parcel was called out. 20 Cottage Road was never rezoned. Proper legal mechanisms, according to Section 5, never happened. I appreciated Mr. Chairman's comment last month where he explained that this is not a board of precedent. So the decision here doesn't mean that this is how decisions will be made in the future. On the matter of precedent, if this board were to allow applicants appeal from the building inspector's correct determination for your own municipal code, that would mean that this 20 Cottage Park Road, a residential home, could be torn down and a business could be put up. So then 30 Cottage Park Road, residents who bought in a residential district, abutting a home that abuts the perimeter of the Center Business District, would now be directly along the perimeter of the business district. And a 2.5-story, because that's what's allowed at the perimeter, a 2.5-story business building could be built smack dab in the middle of Cottage Park Road. That's what that determination would say. That's the precedent that would be set. And the same thing would happen across the street at 23 Cottage Park Road. Their neighbors, no longer being abutters to the perimeter, would be directly along the line of the perimeter. I saw maps from 1974, 1983, and 1987. Not one of the maps that I saw had parcel lines. They're hand-drawn. And what I did see, again, excusing my crude paper ripping and folding, what I did see was lot lines that were drawn over, and I was told that they were fuzzy and they weren't exact. I'm seeing on some of them that the shaded area moves through portions of this held for scale lot line and portions where it didn't. It doesn't match up exactly. Again, hand-drawn maps. We haven't seen any evidence of notice. We haven't seen any evidence of a hearing, any evidence of a vote that would rezone something that has been residential from the time that it was built and parsed until now. So saying that the maps don't matter and then laying scaled, angle-locked, drawings off of the computer on top of them that you can manipulate for size isn't what's controlling. It's the fact that it's never been rezoned and there's been no evidence that this was done properly through the town council by a vote on the individual parcels. Okay, so I will just briefly discuss the variances very quickly. In the same manner, applicant has an affirmative duty on the variances to demonstrate, again, that the soil condition that is complained of, my understanding is that topography and shape are not being argued, and if they are, I'll speak to that later. But that in seeking a variance, the applicant has an affirmative duty to prove that any hardships claimed are due to conditions unique to the parcel. They've failed to do so. They've claimed that there's flooding in the basement. That is not unique to the parcel. 11 Somerset Avenue, the Book Depot and Coffee Shop. They get water in the cellar when the sewer's backed up. They get water in the cellar when the water in the street comes up above the curb, flows right in through the front door. They've had to install a sump pump, all in the Center Business District. 2 Somerset Avenue, Gagan Insurance, in the Center Business District. They get water in the basement every single storm. 80 Jefferson Street, the law offices of Falvo, Solari, and Goldberg during rainstorms, approximately 2 inches of rain in the basement, likely due in part to that underwater ground table. Every single storm, they've had to install a sump pump. 3 Somerset Avenue, Sweats Liquors, in heavy rainstorms, they get, my understanding is up to 2 feet of water in the cellar. I have also attached to the letter that I have submitted in evidence with Madam Clerk, examples of some articles that have been written regarding some of the flooding that occurs in the town, specifically in the Center Business District. This is not specific to this parcel. On top of that, applicant has an affirmative duty to prove that any such soil condition specifically creates the hardship. You can't simply say, the soil condition means we can't put a parking garage in the basement, therefore we can't build. So if they're requesting, I'm not going to discuss the rear setback at the moment, but if they're discussing a height variance and a story variance, they have to explicitly connect the two. It can't correlate, it has to be a causal relationship between the soil condition and the height. That has not been done. On top of that, I have heard applicants say numerous times, specifically last month at this board meeting, I could have built a different property with no parking. That is an admission that there is no hardship, that a variance is not necessary, and that there are no grounds to grant it. If a different building could be built, then the applicant can build that building, and there is no specific hardship that requires that they get a variance. I understand at the last meeting, everyone was very upset about parking. So I'm gonna say the word threat, and I don't mean it, I don't believe applicant is threatening anyone, but the threat of a building that doesn't have any parking is not proper grounds for granting a variance. It's simply an admission that applicant could build a building that is within the stated building code determinations made by the town council. I think that's about where I can wrap up.
And if we end up talking about variances, there'll be another, you'll be more ability to.
Understood, yeah, I don't want to take up too much of your time about the specifics of the other variances. I will leave it at that with just an emphasis on the fact that overlaying on maps where you pull out specific sections of a parcel and they don't have parcel lines on them is not the same as demonstrating that proper legal notice was given according to Section 5, that a public hearing was held, and that a 2/3 vote by the town council was made on rezoning the individual parcels, specifically 20 Cottage Park Road has never been rezoned, and I haven't seen any evidence that applicant has put forth to try to demonstrate that it was done in accordance with Section 5. Thank you.
Anyone else like to be heard? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Thomas Riley. I live at 30 Cottage Park Road. At the last meeting, they submitted some written testimony that I gave to the clerk at the end of the meeting.
Mr. Riley.
Yes.
Again, I'm going to say it again, maybe a little less politely than before. Please keep talking in the gallery to a minimum, if any at all. Next time, it won't be nice. Okay? Mr. Riley.
So I went over my written testimony last time. Attached to that, what I gave to the members of the board were a series of map attachments with an explanation of what they were. I didn't go over them at the meeting because they were in the interest of time. I'd like to refer to them right now. The first thing I gave was a 1937 zoning map of the town of Winthrop. It shows the properties in residential B, the designation at that time. And if you look at the shape of the business properties, the end of the corner of Somerset Avenue and Cottage Park Road, you see a triangular piece on one side and the subject property on the opposite corner. The back of that triangular piece is almost directly across the street. You almost draw a straight line from that to the rear property which goes next to 20 Cottage Park Road. There was a Sanborn map. It was a map of each individual parcel that the town used to obtain. They won't do it any longer because it can be done by computers, but this company put out maps every single year relative to laying out each individual plot. If you look at the plots and you take a look at the map from before, or previous maps, you'll see the same shape, the same two business districts at the corner of Cottage Park Road, same configuration, the same relative shapes. The next piece that I gave you was that Sanborn map that I referred to. Somewhere in the early 1970s,
Copy those maps?
I gave it to,
I know what you did.
We have one,
I'm sorry, I just have messed up.
oh, here's a, sorry.
It's attached to my written
Yep.
Sorry.
Okay. So we have the 1937 map. The next one is the Sanborn map with the individual parcels on it. You take a look at the two properties, two business properties at the end of Cottage Park Road and Somerset Avenue. You see similar shapes. I then found a copy of what I think was a legal opinion sent to the planning board, probably around 1971 by Town Council Joe Hart. It was a request for a variance on that property, the triangular piece in the corner of Cottage Park Road and Somerset Avenue. He submitted it, showing the residential districts. It included 20, 23 Cottage Park, 29 Cottage Park Road, and my house at 30 in red, marking that down and indicating that that was the residential district. The 1974 vote, and I was on the planning board when we put the map together. There had been several changes in the 1960s of zoning in the town that were fairly significant. We felt it was appropriate to come up with a new map. We contracted Whitman and Howard to draw the map. There's a copy of that in there. It's similar to the one that was up on the board before. The next piece was a blow-up that shows the properties that we're discussing tonight. You again take a look at it. If you take a look at the blow-up, you'll see the same shape of the business districts, the same triangular piece, the same property across the street. The 2006 map would show you the same kind of configuration, the same shape of the parcels, the same relative thing. If you stand at the back corner of the property across the street, if you look straight across, you see the back of this of the 1026 property, and the fence line was in the Ferranti's home. That's where the business district is. And it gave you the assessor's map that lays out the parcels in somewhat of detail. I took a look at the memo that was done by Terry Delahanty, the legal memo, and then I went up to the library and looked up several of the annual reports. My house and the houses along Cottage Park Road were recorded as deeds in 1920. There was no zoning actions taken by the town prior to that date. Those deeds were recorded, the property was laid out, they were later subdivided, the White House and Rosina's in 1951. The properties existed and they were listed properly in deeds. There's no vote at the town meeting, of the town council, ever to zone any property on Cottage Park Road as a business district. Every vote, every bylaw that was adopted references properties on Somerset Avenue. There's nothing that says anything on Cottage Park Road was ever in any kind of a district other than residential area. If the maps that they had coming up here were correct, if you stood on my side and you looked across the street, you'd see that commercial building on the opposite corner. It's not there. If you look at it, it's one house lot down. We drew the map around the time that I was buying my house. I knew what I was, I looked at it, I was on the Board of Selectmen when it was hanging up on the wall, referred to it constantly. I can tell you, without any doubt at all, the private homes on Cottage Park Road are in residential A district. They're not in the business district.
Anyone else like to be heard on this matter?
I'm just gonna give this to Madam Clerk so you have it.
Thank you. It's fast work.
Amazing artist.
Yeah,
Right,
clearly.
it's awesome.
Yes, sir. Microphones are over here, so whatever, you can probably project that, I guess. Perfect. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. My name is John Vitaliano. I live at 19 Seymour Street in Winthrop. I was born in this town a long time ago. I've lived here for virtually all of my life. I'm here to basically urge the Board of Appeals to vote in support of the presentations that have already been made by Attorney Jacqueline Doherty and Tom Rowley. I've been following this issue for some time because I've had a long-term interest in the overall welfare of this town, which I really deeply care about. And even though I'm not a direct abutter, I know a lot of the people who are involved in this town and who are involved in this case, and I know them well. And I urge you to vote as Jacqueline Doherty and Tom Rowley have argued, not only for this particular case, but I'm absolutely convinced that if you do so, it will benefit the town as a whole from a number of perspectives. It will enhance the overall economic vitality of the town, and it will improve the overall quality of life for all 18,000 residents of the town in every way. At that, I'll just stop my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Yeah. Steve Hines, Precinct 6, 11 Hutchinson. Separate from all the legalities and separate from all the back and forth, I want to bring attention to the fact that, like, we have an entire generation of Winthrop residents that are urging this town to change. We have a town government that tells us we are out of money, and we have a school district that's firing teachers and cutting programs. We have an entire generation, my generation, screaming for change, begging for change. And I just want everybody in this room to take a look at themselves in the mirror and, like, realize the lengths at which you are going to stall our economic progress and to stall our cultural progress. It's appalling. It's appalling that you would take your self-interest and hold it so close and try to destroy everything that so many young folks in this town have worked for. You know, I haven't really said a whole lot about this, like, on an emotional scale. Like, I'm, like, really, really disgusted with the way this thing has played out. And I thank Joanna for coming in and listening to us. We say what we need, and then you give it to us. And then I'm disgusted that I have people in this room that I've known my whole life that are here to stop what we've been trying to do for 6 years. It makes me sick, and I'm so sorry. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Donna Segretti Riley, 30 Cottage Park Road. I had no plan to speak tonight, but in response to Mr. Hines, I felt compelled to. As a property owner, I know that zoning laws have a legislative intent. There's a reason for it. There's a reason for zoning to protect the privacy, to protect the residential atmosphere of homes, things that people live in, people that raise their kids in, homes that people raise their families in, yards that their children have played in. And, you know, those of us who own property in the town and do pay our taxes, I'm just abhorred to hear that the law is something that we should just set aside and separate from it. The density in this town has proven that we can't build out, so we build up. And I think density has to be considered here in the town of 1.5 square miles, when we have 18,500. And I know there have been people who, including myself, feel that something has to be done with some of the blighted buildings down in the center. However, any tax dollars that are garnered may be going to lawsuits. Underline the word law. And separate from what Mr. Hines has said, I think the law is very, very important here. You're a legal board. You know that. You know what the law is for these kinds of situations, and zoning is for a reason. And when I hear that zoning should be kind of thrown out the window and we should just develop, I really wonder what's going to happen to the tax dollars that are garnered by this kind of development. There are going to be police, fire, medical visits, etc., that the school expenses that will be needed to addressed. At the last planning board meeting, Jim Soper, who was the previous building inspector, warned seriously about doing things the right way and within the law of zoning. There's a reason for zoning. You people on this board know that better than anybody else. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Before you start, I just want to make sure we're recording.
Good evening, board. I wasn't going to speak tonight either, but because I must
Sorry,
say,
you need your name and address.
thank you. My name's Anna Bakos. I'm at 24 Bartlett Road, precinct 5. I wasn't going to speak tonight either, but I must say, because of comments made earlier tonight, I've changed my mind, and my message and my tone will be a bit more harsh than I have spoken in previous meetings, and I feel rightly so. After the previous board meeting, I sent the board a letter with enclosures which I hope you've received and reviewed. I've been listening to and speaking up about the CBD issues for the past 3 years now. On behalf of myself and my mother, who were surprised to find out one day that our home was rezoned from a residential to a mixed use to accommodate the CBD project. Imagine our shock. I take offense to being told that my property, my home, where I live, doesn't matter. Or what has been done to or happens to it doesn't matter. Because it does matter. It matters to me. It matters to my mother. It matters to our family. And it matters to my dad, who bought his home with his meager military wages for his family when he returned home a war hero. And I know from that comment, it probably would ring a bell from the letters that you received from me. God rest his soul. I do take offense to someone insulting us tonight and on previous occasions, because it has happened, for living where we live, as if our home and its location are not good enough, so that whatever a developer or anyone wishes to do, they should do it because it's okay. Because where we live in the center means nothing. I also take offense to someone telling me that my years of contributions to this town doesn't matter. That I'm here for these many years in this town because this is a beloved town, this is the town where I've lived and grown up in. Doesn't matter. We've contributed to the society that's coming up in this town. We've laid the foundation, as well as everyone else here, as you can rightly see, for this town. We should appreciate that. Please, this issue is obviously much more than a building going up by a developer who's eager to establish themselves in our beloved town. And I hope and I pray that all that has been documented or presented previously and tonight will be reviewed by you and taken into consideration when you're making your decision. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Anyone else like to be heard on this matter? Here and then, Mr. Riley again. Oh, no, you first. Sorry. Go ahead.
Linda Daniels, Precinct 2. And since John mentioned this, I'm his age. He was in my graduating class, Mr. Castellano, and I was born in Winthrop. I have lived here my whole life too, but I'm on the opposite side. I just don't like hearing scare tactics. When people get up and say, oh, the infrastructure, it's going to be more children in the schools. When my daughter graduated in 1982, there were 250 children in the graduating class. That has gone down. We're at 140. I've been checking. Our schools haven't increased. Even we've had some new projects, Atlantis, Seal Harbor, Belmere, and our students count hasn't increased, but we have gained some taxable dollars. And I'm just saying, I think this is a good project. It's not oversized. There's only 31 units. They're small units. I doubt there's going to be children. Or if there are, very few. I live at Atlantis, and I did check, and there is one child out of 44 units that goes to school in Winthrop. Okay. So I understand people are upset about the zoning, but they didn't mind when a 5-story was erected on Pleasant Street. They weren't down there fighting. They could care less. It didn't affect them. Okay, I can see that if I was next to it, I would probably be on their side. But since I'm not, I'm thinking of the benefit to the whole town, not just the CBD. Just the influx of people and new ideas. I'm just for this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Riley?
I'm sorry, there was one point that I overlooked when I was up here previously. On June 10th, I attended, there's a lot of people there, a meeting of the planning board. The planning board's been asked by the town council to come up with a definitive map of the center business district. They deliberated and they made some preliminary votes. They've asked the assistant town manager to incorporate those votes into a map that they can adopt and they can deal with and vote on at their next meeting. They specifically stated and asked that the map be drawn with the exclusion of any private homes on Cottage Park Road, Somerset Avenue, Bartlett Road, Putnam Street. That should be part of the record, part of their minutes. They've made a determination after they've heard all of the testimony that they've had, taking a look at all of the things, that the center business district boundary is next to, does not include, but next to Rosina Ferranti's house, next to McCaughlin's house on Cottage Park Road. So the determination has been made by the planning board so far. It hasn't been officially adopted, but they did make preliminary findings. They're in the record. They should be part of the minutes of that meeting.
Anyone else like to be heard on this matter? Yes.
My name is Ruth Cook Ashton. I'm in Precinct 5. I have a question about the rear and side business. Could you bring up your slide again about that? Because I didn't understand it.
So the question is,
So, on the pictures, isn't, so,
we've got a question. So go ahead, and I think I'm going to have a similar question, so I might not ask them to answer this right now. I'm going to have a question about the yard as well, so go ahead.
okay, I guess I don't understand how that part there is the rear and this part isn't. I mean, I get the building shape, but it seemed to me that isn't it determined by the property line? I guess I don't understand why part of that whole and that whole side, part of it is the
your answer for now because I have a related question to that. So you'll hear us ask a question about it.
Yeah,
We'll
that's
get an
great.
answer.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to be heard on this matter? Going once. Anyone else like to be heard on 1026 Somerset Avenue? Going twice. 1026 Somerset, going 3 times. The public hearing is closed. Questions from the board?
So would I have a chance to respond to some issues? At the appropriate time, whatever you like.
If you, why don't we ask our questions first and then we'll see where we are?
These are questions specific to the request for appeal on analysis from the building inspector.
So, right, so our questions right now are about the appeal from the building inspector's determination on where the map line is for the CBD as it relates to that particular property line. And any questions that we may have relative to if we think that the petitioner is right, if that's what the members of the board think, whether we have any specific questions about setbacks or how they otherwise comply or don't comply with zoning relative to that, with that being that. So that's where we are right now. If we decide that they're incorrect on the map, then we go on to a variance discussion with additional testimony from the developer, more comments from the public, and more questions from us. So, we'll go.
A lot of interesting maps. I spent some time thinking about this before tonight. And I can see both sides. You know, in the trying to determine whether this is in the CBD or not. It can be argued both ways. I guess the question more addressed to the chair is, knowing that the CBD happened after many of the structures were built, could you comment on this determination of the residents becoming part of the CBD and how that happens, or what that means? Because I'm not familiar with that.
So, under 48 Section 5, which is, let's go back to 1974, 48 Section 5 was the operative statute. That was amended in 1976. Right? So the prior iteration, I'm not going to get the section right, but it was pretty similar to what's there now. So let's go based on 48 Section 5. 48 Section 5 says that there's a couple different ways you can rezone properties, right? One is a petitioner bringing an action and putting them on. At this point, remember, we're a town meeting at this point, not a town council, right? So it was bringing it before a town meeting and getting at least a 2/3 vote to change the zone. Right? To change the map, to change the zoning, with notice, it's a town meeting, it's on the warrant, everybody gets notice, right? A little different than a town council, where the town council can initiate, have a meeting, ordain zoning on its own without having the warrant process going through sort of the planning board, all the stuff that comes with that. It's a much different process with town council. But there's still legal motion. So what would have had to have happened? Whenever it happened, whenever the prior, so from what I understand, because I read the Delahanty memo at least once, and then went back through the appendices very carefully. And what I took away from that is, at some point, there was a business district created in the city, right? And that business district, the geometry of that didn't change a whole heck of a lot over the years. And it did, at least, so it appears that in 1987, there was actually a town meeting vote taken, a unanimous vote taken by the town to adopt a revised map created for the center business district. It didn't revise the map, but it did it based on a map that was specifically called out in the minutes from 4/30/87. That the post-center business district zone map dated February 2nd, 1987. And then the Delahanty memo attaches as addendum 9, that this is actually proposed village business district zone February 2nd, 1987, as the operative map. So I think it showed up in
It's here.
their presentation. If you look at, yeah, that's the one, right? So that's the one from 1987. And it wasn't any different than the business district that existed before, except for, if you look, there's a little hatched piece right at the back of Adams. That was added. Nope, the other side of Adams. Nope, behind Bank of America. They'll come back towards Cottage Park Road. See the little hatchet piece? That was, I think that was added to the district at that point in time. So that was the only change geometrically. So that, I think that, to the extent that there's any question about whether that geometry is correct, that's the geometry of that district. And the question is, how does, and it was adopted by, at least we know in 1987, when the Center Business District was originally adopted, that was the map. Now, there were no Center Business District regulations in 1987. Those got added later, but that was the Center District. And it's a state consistent, it was like that before, it's consistent with it, the way it's shown on the 86 map, the 83 map, and on the 2006 map. That hasn't changed. So I think there is actually a vote, a unanimous vote by the town meeting of the town of Winthrop in 1987 that reaffirmed that geometry. So that's, and I don't think anybody disputes that geometry, as far as I've heard. So the question is, what does that geometry mean on our maps? At least in my opinion.
So you're saying that this exact determination happened with that vote to identify that resident as part of the business?
Well, no, I'm saying that there was a vote that established that district.
Right.
And that was done at a town meeting.
Right.
So there's nothing, whether it's, so the way that it works on the back end of a zone, a rezoning of any type, is that when you're in town, your rezoning goes to the office of the attorney general, right? And their land use division decides whether or not there's a procedural defect or some other defect in the way your zoning is done. And they have to do that within 90 days. And if they don't return an objection, or if they don't, and they certify it, then, or don't certify it, then you know you have a, they tell you if you have a problem. If they don't tell you you have a problem in 90 days, your zoning is determined to be valid. And there's not really a way to, good way to appeal it, right? So at some point, under 48 Section 5, there was action taken by the town to reaffirm or adopt whatever it was, that is the map. And that's been followed since then. So I don't have any question that there was a proper map created, probably in the past, but 87, this clarifies it. Because there's no record of anybody objecting to it. It's been carried forth on every map. It's referenced in our current, the zoning in Winthrop was redone not all that long ago. When we went from, the number designations changed and everything else, we redid our ordinance, right? And the map from 06 was the map that was referenced, right? It's the map that we pulled out. It's the one that started in 83, which had that geometry. So I don't think that there's any way to argue that somehow that map from 87 or any of the other ones that show this geometry is invalid. The question is whether that geometry includes within it any residential properties. At least to me. That's.
Well, what about the claim that individual properties, the commercial properties, were notified and the residential properties were?
Well, I mean, everybody's aware of a town meeting, right? Everybody knows what a town meeting and what the warrant is, right? Whether there was a procedural defect in 1987 about people not getting notice, they had appeal rights then. Right? They had 90 days to appeal based on a procedural error in the base when it was done.
I guess the claim is that the property, 20 Cotton Park Road, was built as in a residential district.
I mean,
When the center business was rezoned, that it was notified that they
It's sort of, I think it's hard to tell because nobody, it's hard to tell exactly why the line was drawn the way it was, and it doesn't follow a lot. It doesn't appear to follow a lot line. It's just geometric. It doesn't appear to follow, at least existing lot lines. But I think at worst, that property on Cottage Park Road is a split lot, partially residential, partially commercial business. And the house has been there so long, even if it was all center business, it'd be a pre-existing legal non-conforming. So it doesn't, from the standpoint of the homeowner, as it relates to their property, it doesn't mean there's some sort of defective issue with their property as a residential property. It just means it's a split, potentially a split. Now, do I think it's necessarily an intended consequence? I don't know. It wasn't clear when that business district was originally created. That was then carried forward and recalled out in '87. But I know that it's possible if it really goes back to the 30s and it was the same geometry, then that's before there was a house between because I think there's actually a map, and I'm trying to find it when the presentation's going on, that referred to that parcel as the Sun's Italy. And I don't know where I saw that, but it's in here somewhere. It leads me to believe that that's when that map was done.
That's the 87 says Sons of Italy. The 87 says Sons of Italy.
Is that what it is? Yeah.
That's the area that they changed the hat there.
Right. So I don't know if that's just the hatched area or what it is. So I couldn't tell what that was. But I know there was a portion that business district has been arranged that way for a very long time. And I agree. I don't think, by the way, the 2014 piece of this is nothing we're talking about because I don't think anything was adopted from the zoning perspective. So I don't care about it. I don't want to talk about it. I think it's a question of whether the official map of the town of Winthrop, where it sets that line. I think that's what's important. And with due respect to the planning board, because I've had people ask me the question about who has the proper jurisdiction here. And to be clear, when someone appeals the decision of the building inspector, there's only one board of jurisdiction, that's us. So everything else is, until actions taken through the town council to change the actual that district's layout, we're stuck with that now, as a matter of law. Yeah.
So, yeah, before we proceed with possible motion, can we go back and discuss the real lot question that was brought up?
Oh, yeah.
I think you had a question.
Yeah, no, I had a question about, but, so before we get to that though, can you go back to the form? There was actually, I think, a piece of your presentation, not the overlay stuff you did, but the piece from the form and place presentation of the planning board. There was one, I think, where you showed in that packet, because it was I think it was actually taken from the form and place packet that was submitted last time.
Yeah, I don't have that whole one up here. I just
Nope,
have those
that
two
one's
pages.
fine.
Okay.
Because, just to clarify for the board, right, like, we're not talking about the brown, we're talking about just the purple. Okay? The purple is what exists, the brown is what 14 would have done. Okay, we don't care about 14. And so here's can you flip to just the one that's just the purple?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you look at the zoning map, if it follows, like if you look at the actual zoning map, right? If it followed the lot lines, that angle wouldn't be this way. When you look at the apex of that triangle, Cottage Park and Somerset together, it would be a much sharper angle this way. Instead, it's sort of here and open. If you follow the lot line, that would be a much different geometry. And that's why I think the form of place thing is actually a residential zone. Because that is, if you follow the lot line of the building to the corner of Somerset and College Park, that line would continue almost straight across. And it doesn't, it goes up at an angle and then it comes back at an angle. I think it does catch the residential building right next to that and 20 Cottage Park, a piece of 20 Cottage Park. As well as some of the rear yards of some of those other houses along the Cottage Park. At least that's been that was my take on the map when we first started looking at this at the first hearing, was the geometry didn't sort of follow the lot lines. And that's okay, zoning has split lots all the time. I don't necessarily think that was, people might have been thinking about where that line, I don't know why they drew the line the way they drew it, but that's the official map of the town.
You can see it goes in lines, along here, right there.
So you want, I do have a question about setbacks first.
Yeah, that's also going to put up, I'm also going to put up, an explanation of how we got, is that the question? Jeremy, maybe just ask your question now, I'll respond.
So my question is, you have a corner lot. And the geometry of this is you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides to this lot. And Somerset is what's going to...
6 sides.
6 sides, sorry. Been a long day. So, Somerset is what you pick as your front.
Correct.
So that means you've got a side on your easterly bound, right? You've got a side on your westerly bound along Cottage Park. Why is the yard that then goes against 20 Cottage Park Road not also a rear yard?
Yep.
It's not parallel to Somerset, but why is that not a rear yard?
So this is taken directly from the Winthrop zoning code 1704-050 definitions. And I have it written out here because I had a feeling this question was going to come up. If you read kind of part of the way down where it says lot line rear, and I've highlighted the parts that are important. A lot only has one rear side, and if the lot is an odd shape, such as a lot like ours with 6 sides, only the lot line furthest from the street shall be considered a rear lot line. And therefore, every other lot line on the property is considered a side lot line. And that is written right below where it says lot line side. A side lot line means any lot line, not a front or rear lot line. So that means that it means that this is our rear. This is our rear. This is actually a side also. This is a side, this is a side, this is a side, and that's it.
So because it's a corner lot, you have the option of choosing which lot that are not front lot line would be considered a rear one. And you've chosen that.
We chose Somerset, yes.
So, I got to think about that. But assuming that's the case, we need a parking variance.
We don't need a parking variance. We are 7 spots short according to the code and according also to the parking code of Winthrop in the CBD. If we are short, we can make a one-time payment for $2,000 per spot.
Where's that in the code?
It's 17.50.210C is in Charlie. It says, any commercial or mixed-use structure that is required to provide parking spaces may make payments to the town in lieu of providing for below that, the one-time payment is established at $2,000.
I have it, you have it as Charlie, I have it as Delta.
But you know what? You're right. You're right. There's no space between paragraphs. Yeah, it's Charlie.
in lieu of Mark.
Right. It's Delta. Correct.
So you'd be paying $14,000 to the town.
Correct.
So, yeah, okay, so let me ask you this question. Are you going to be, your residents will not be eligible or will they be eligible to get resident apartments?
Is there such a thing as resident?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think so. Yeah, so long as they're paying excess, that's what we're eligible.
I mean, so one of my big concerns, and I know that we may not have, depending on where we end up, we may not have a lot of people on this, but I really am concerned about if you drop 7 spaces here, they're gonna be parking in the neighborhood, and that's gonna be.
So I'm gonna rock in a hard place on this one.
I understand that, and I don't know that there's, depending on where the board comes out, I don't know that there's a heck of a lot we can do.
This
about it.
is per the letter of the code. There has been a lot of comments from, during the public comment that, we need to follow the law, we need to follow the law. It is our absolutely firm contention here that we are following the zoning code. We are not asking for an exception to the zoning code in any regard. We are following it to the letter of the law. We are doing that to facilitate the decision-making process so we can move forward. I have to say it is really astounding to me that the expectation for a developer to come into a town with good intentions to develop a property, being presented by every town official with a master plan that says, we just adopted this, we want to move forward in our town, forget about the map, I'm not talking about the map, but we want to move forward in our town, we want to develop, we want the future, and our town just adopted this, the whole town, like, this was adopted, let's go develop. We review the maps in place. Is it really the presumption of this board that it is expectation of a developer to have to go back 50 years to evaluate the maps? There is a presumption, and Jim has all the legal case law to say that the maps that are presented in the town are the legal maps. The maps can be analyzed properly. I understand that the neighbor's attorney made some cute designs. I trust you. Trust me, these designs were not cute designs. There is no way to manipulate the geometry as I was showing on these boards. If I did manipulate it, willingly, purposefully or not purposefully, I want to say one, it wouldn't look the way it looks. If we manipulated it, there wouldn't be space for Blackstrap and all of those other buildings up there. If we manipulated it, it would be shrunken. This is the official sizing and lot of the town and of the maps. Al Legee did not have the benefit of this analysis. Al Legee did not explain any of his methodology when he gave his letter. And it is worth noting another time, because I feel that it is very important. Al Legee was very vocal in his support of 4-story zoning until the very last second that he published the letter that said otherwise. I still have not understood or been given a proper reason for this change of heart. But for months, he was verbally saying that he believed we had 4-story zoning.
Yeah, and let me just be clear, I understand the frustration of the developer because you've been in a number of boards and now you're with us. And I also understand the frustration of the neighbors because they're not sure how they got here. So, we are a board that isn't, particularly, I hate to say it and sound this direct, but we're not moved by emotional speech. We're logical, we're bound by law, period, hard stop.
Absolutely.
So anything about moving the town forward or moving the town backwards, we welcome those comments, but the reality is we don't, doesn't matter to us at all.
I totally understand that. However, as part of those conversations, we were shown the 2006 map.
I get it.
As a developer, the expectation is that you should be able to go into account, evaluate the zoning, and as accurate.
I hope that's the case because I do that every day, not in this town, but in other towns, so I understand. Attorney
So
Zavaleta.
I just wanted to highlight one point. I think the board's questions and the discourse between you and the actually taken a lot of ink off.
You want to keep going, or?
Legal pad. No, because I have nothing else to say, but I just do want to say this, these three things, is that as we approach the site plan review committee hearings and got ready to go to the planning board for a major design review, a lot of this questioning and uncertainty about the maps started to percolate to the surface. So what we did, because there were competing opinions within town hall, not everyone in town hall was on the same page, but we thought in Joanna to improve it. We asked for determinations from Al McGee to put this whole question to rest. In view of the Delahanty memo, which Chair has, correctly said, that's not a determination, it's an opinion, and I respect it. I write up, I said it's a great meander through the history of the town of Winthrop. A lot can be learned from it, but it's not a determination. But the only determination we were expecting a determination different than what Mr. McGee gave us, because all of the plans are predicated upon a four-story by right. So, to the extent that there is some ambiguity, and this is what I'm leading up to, Mr. Chairman, is that whatever ambiguity may actually exist, and I don't think that form of place analysis is ambiguous. I think it blows away the ambiguity. I think Joanna's analysis blows away the ambiguity. But if there is ambiguity, the Massachusetts Appeals Court has dealt with it. They dealt with it in Jenkins versus Pepperell, 18 Massachusetts Appeals Court, 265, 1984 case, which held that in such matters of ambiguity, the ambiguity must be interpreted in light most favorable to the landowner. We are the landowner. We asked for the determination. Mr. McGee said, it's ambiguous, and I'm going to have to make a study of it. His study was made without the benefit of formulas, and we went to that presentation, planning board, and it's pretty clear. They did it not just one way, they did it sort of 6 ways to Sunday. Every point of the compass was hit by formulas. So it's not a matter of us or Joanna creating these analyses as advocacy tools. They're all based on someone else's data. And I think I agree that if you look at that 2006 map, it's the same as the 87, same as the 83. And I don't think that there's anything that's occurred procedurally that would invalidate the 87 or the 2006 map. Because in the zoning code, it says that the zoning map is the map as amended to date. And to date would be 2019, but it has only been amended to 2006. Therefore, it looks like the 2006 map is the operative map, but it's the same as the 87 map with regard to Joanna's plan. So I appreciate the sort of very surgical, it's sterile, and unbiased, and unemotional, rational job that the board has in interpreting the law. And without emotion, I know there's emotion on all sides, but I think the board's done a really good job of doing that, dealing with it. I think it's really obvious that, for whatever reason, and by the way, up until 1951, 20 Cottage Park Road was a vacant lot. 1951, Mr. DeFlumery, the developer, bought it. He built the house. He sold it to somebody. That somebody in 1961 sold it to the current owner. So there hasn't always historically been a house there going back to Horse and Buggy. That was a vacant lot. Whatever its designation was then, or what its purpose was then, to be used for business or used for mixed use, who knows in 1950? But it was vacant. So it's not as if somebody drew lines around it and said, we need to snag this into the business. Those are just.
Are you convinced that the rear property line in question been closer to?
Well, I mean, the definition of rear lot line specifically says that if there is a potential that on a corner lot where there's a potential to have more than one thing that can be considered a rear lot line, the applicant gets to choose which one they're calling the rear lot. And everything else is a side or a front. Because there can only be one rear lot. So, we have one front, four sides.
There wasn't a point that said the furthest from the street, parallel.
Here's the one that's furthest.
So that-
Let me take this one. Hang on. She'll have this in the package.
Not having. Or having a lot of odd shape.
To me, that says it right there, the one furthest from the street. That's not the one they're indicating, it's the one that lets the 20 Cottage Park. This would
It's
be.
not furthest from the street, there's a cottage park that is right there.
Furthest from the street that you're designating the front.
It doesn't say that, it just says furthest from the street. It doesn't say from the front lawn.
Yeah, but
It does not say the front, it says street.
It's saying the street, so it's indicating, it's referencing a street. I feel like it's referring to the street that you designated the front. I guess my point
it's
is,
not,
I'm ready to make a motion
the
on.
not A, the not A is an important part of it.
Yeah, and I'm not an attorney. I'm ready to make a motion, but I think your original plan that was submitted had the rear lot you're designating needing relief.
Yes.
And building inspector didn't give you a denial letter for this one. He did not make any updated ruling or decision based on your revisions.
Right,
You know what I'm saying?
Right,
He
if they
has
make a decision on the map, and we do nothing else, they still have to go get a building, they would still have to go get a building permit and prove that they're right on the line.
This cape, on this.
Correct.
on this
Otherwise,
subdivision.
if the building inspector doesn't agree with that, they're back here, right? If they need relief, or they change the plan. Right, that's, because by the way, that, dealing with that change, we don't have a plan that would deal with a change like that. We haven't asked for variances. So that is enforcement. So we think that we're not approving the design, we're passing, the only time we'd be approving the design of the building is if we were passing on the variances, or making a decision on variances, right? That when we talk about the plan. If we're inclined to make a decision about the map to see if we're moving to a phase 2 of this discussion or not, then, they then have, if we decide in their favor, then they have to go and convince the building inspector and get a building permit. And if we don't, then we're talking about variances. So, any further questions from the board? Or members on the board not sitting on this matter? Do we have a motion?
So, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion on case number 011-2019, 1026 Sunset Ave, on the request to appeal the zoning decision by the building department, by the building inspector. I motion that the board overturn the decision. And zone the property, center as the, not abutting a resident district.
Make a determination that this lot is not directly abut a residence.
Correct.
Okay, do I have a second on that?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, ayes have it. So with that, we have made a determination that the lot does not directly abut a residential parcel, a residential zone. Residential parcel, there's no question. Residential zone, for the resident, we didn't make a determination about the status of that parcel because we don't think that's before us. But with that, that is an approval 3-0. So we will render a decision. That will be filed with the clerk. There will be a 20-day appeal period under 48 Section 17, and assuming there's no appeals, even though it's not a variance decision, I would still suggest recording it for the purposes of, sort of the record on that property. And at that point, you can go and seek a building permit with the building inspector.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.